A barbecue stand, customers eating, paying, leaving satisfied. Nothing unusual about that, except for one thing. They were consuming human remains, mixed with pork and beef. How did this happen? Who was responsible? His name was Joe Metheny, but he wasn't alone in his crimes. There were 3 others: Gerald Stano, Kenneth Granviel, Patrick Kearney. 4 faces, 4 names, names most people have never heard. These cases are documented, they're verified, and they're more disturbing than the famous killers you already know. Stano confessed to 41 murders. Metheny dismembered his victims and sold their flesh. Granviel massacred entire families. Kearney sealed 21 bodies in trash bags and scattered them across the desert. Not all monsters make headlines. Some just fade away. But their victims? They deserve to be remembered. Before we get into this, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I want to see how far this story reaches. Let's start with Gerald Stano, born in 1951. His birth name was Paul Zeininger. At 6 months old, he was adopted by Eugene and Norma Stano. They gave him a new name, a new life, a fresh start. But some things can't be erased. Even as a child, there were signs. He tortured animals. He was drawn to fire. He watched things burn. And when you looked into his eyes, there was something missing. Empathy. Connection, the things that make us human. His parents saw it, teachers saw it, but no one knew what to do about it. By his teenage years, Gerald had already killed. Her name was Mary. He strangled her, left her body behind a fast food restaurant like she was nothing, like she was trash. And that was just the beginning. Gerald Stano didn't look like a killer. That was his advantage. He moved between states, Florida, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Always moving, always hunting. His victims were women society often ignored. Women people didn't look for when they went missing. He had a system. Appear harmless, offer a ride, just trying to help. And they'd get in his car because he seemed safe. Then he'd drive, away from the crowds, away from the lights, to places where no one could hear them scream. He strangled them, sometimes with shoelaces, sometimes with belts, whatever he had on hand. Other times he used a knife, quick, brutal, efficient. But he didn't stop there. After they were dead, he posed them, arranged their bodies in unnatural positions. This wasn't about rage for him. This was about control. Even in death, he controlled them. 41 women. That's what he confessed to. 41. But the real number? It could be higher.
Welcome back. In our Central Florida True Crime Files, the family is finally getting some closure after 4 decades, thanks to some new technology.
The body of a woman who was dumped alongside of I-95 near Port Orange has finally been identified. Fox 35's Marley Capper has more on how this cold case was cracked.
That the woman on the side of the road was a 25-year-old woman named Pamela K. Whitman.
For 43 years, Pamela Whitman's remains were nameless.
Pamela left her home in Indiana to come to Daytona Beach to start a new life.
On November 5th, 1980, her body was found. At the time, examiners believed she was killed 4 to 6 months before she was actually found, and then they had no way to identify her body. Until now.
Forensics and genealogy for justice.
1980, that's when it all came crashing down. Her name was Donna Hensley. She was a nursing student. Gerald tried to grab her, tried to force her into his car. But Donna fought back. She screamed, she clawed, she refused to be another victim. And that changed everything. Police arrested him, brought him in for questioning. And once he started talking, he couldn't stop. He confessed to 41 murders, described each victim in detail, told them where he dumped the bodies, what he did to them, how long it took. No remorse, no emotion, just facts. He remembered their faces, their names, the locations, everything. The detectives listening to him said it was like he was reading from a shopping list. Cold, detached, clinical. Multiple life sentences, that's what he got. Gerald Stano spent the rest of his life on death row. In 1998, they executed him. But here's the thing that keeps investigators up at night. 41 confirmed victims. That's already horrific. But how many more are out there? How many women went missing during those years? How many bodies were never found? How many families still don't have answers? Gerald Stano is gone, but his victims, some of them still don't have names. And while Stano was hunting women on the East Coast, another killer was operating in Baltimore. A man who would take his crimes to a level that's almost too disturbing to believe. Joe Metheny, born in 1955, Baltimore area, Maryland. If you're looking for reasons why someone becomes what he became, his childhood gives you plenty of answers. Broken home, that's putting it mildly. Neglect, abuse, the kind of environment that leaves scars you can't see but never really heal. He joined the U.S. Army, thought maybe the structure would help, thought maybe he could turn things around. He couldn't. Violence followed him. It always does with men like this. And eventually the Army didn't want him anymore. By the 1990s, Joe was drifting. Worked as a trucker, worked as a forklift operator, never stayed anywhere too long, never put down roots. He lived in abandoned factories, slept where he could, used drugs to quiet whatever was screaming inside his head. But the drugs didn't help. They never do. The rage just kept building and building and building. It started with his girlfriend. His estranged girlfriend, to be specific. He went looking for her. Couldn't find her. And that rage, that anger he'd been carrying around for years, it had to go somewhere. So he went to a homeless encampment in South Baltimore. 2 men were sleeping there. They didn't know him. They'd never done anything to him. They were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Joe took an axe, and while they slept, he killed them both, hacked them to death, then dragged their bodies to a nearby river and dumped them like garbage. But that didn't satisfy him. He started targeting sex workers, women who wouldn't be missed right away, women whose disappearances wouldn't raise immediate alarms. He'd lure them to his trailer, promise them money, promise them safety, then he'd strangle them, dismember their bodies, and store the pieces in Tupperware containers in his refrigerator. Let that sink in for a moment. Tupperware containers in his fridge, like leftovers. Now we come back to where we started, the barbecue stand. Joe Metheny set up a roadside stand, started selling meat, ribs, burgers, the usual stuff you'd expect. Except it wasn't all pork. It wasn't all beef. He mixed human flesh in with the other meat, cooked it, seasoned it, served it to customers who had absolutely no idea what they were eating. People paid him, thanked him, told him it was delicious, came back for more. And Joe? He thought it was funny. Called his killings games. That's the word he used. Games. No remorse, no guilt, no sense that what he was doing was wrong. He confessed to 8 murders officially. Maybe 10, but investigators think the real number could be higher. How much higher? We'll never know for sure. Joe's arrogance is what finally brought him down. He tried to dispose of a body, a woman named Kimberly Spicer, but he messed up, got sloppy. Police found her remains in his trailer. Once they started looking, they found everything. The evidence was overwhelming. Forensic proof, physical evidence, his own admissions. In 1998, he was sentenced to life in prison, no possibility of parole. He died there in 2017. But here's what haunts people about this case. That barbecue stand operated for months, maybe longer. How many people ate there? How many people consumed human flesh without knowing it? How many people walked away satisfied, thinking they just had a good meal? We'll never know, and maybe that's for the best. While Joe Metheny was operating in the shadows of Baltimore, another killer was perfecting his craft in Texas. A man who could look you in the eye at church on Sunday and then murder an entire family by Monday. Kenneth Granviel, born in 1950, Fort Worth, Texas. His childhood reads like a textbook case of how to create a killer. Absent father, strict, religious mother. The kind of household where love was conditional and punishment was severe. Those early years left deep psychological scars, the kind that never really heal. By his teenage years, Kenneth was already showing who he really was. He attempted to sexually assault his own mother. Read that again. His own mother. After that, they sent him to Gatesville State School, a juvenile detention facility. They thought maybe they could fix him there, straighten him out. But Kenneth didn't get fixed. He got smarter. He learned how to blend in, how to avoid detection, how to make people think he was normal, reformed, safe. Those skills would serve him well later. Kenneth enlisted in the U.S. Army. A fresh start, a chance to prove himself. It didn't work out. He assaulted fellow soldiers multiple times. The Army gave him a dishonorable discharge and sent him packing. So Kenneth drifted, worked odd jobs, moved from place to place, never staying anywhere long enough for people to see through the mask. But then something changed. He started going to church regularly, every Sunday, sometimes more than that. He became a fixture in the community. People saw him as a good man, a reformed man, someone who'd turned his wife around. They had no idea what was really going on inside his head. That violent rage hadn't gone anywhere. It was still there, festering, growing stronger. And eventually, it was going to come out. 1974. That's when Kenneth stopped pretending. Laura McClendon and 4 members of her family. Kenneth tied them up, all of them. Then he assaulted them, and then he killed them, one by one. Children were among the dead. Let that sink in. Children. And afterward, Kenneth talked about it casually, like he was discussing the weather. No remorse, no guilt, no sense that he'd done something wrong. But he wasn't done. 1975. Betty Williams and Vera Hill. Kenneth's pattern was simple. He'd approach his victims with promises of help. He seemed trustworthy, safe. People let their guard down around him. Big mistake. Once he had them alone, he'd stab them, repeatedly. The violence was shocking, excessive, more than what was needed to kill someone. This wasn't just about murder for Kenneth. This was about rage, about power, about making people suffer. Over the years, investigators started connecting the dots. Multiple murders, multiple victims, all linked back to one man, Kenneth Granviel. 1995, 20 years after some of his crimes, that's when they finally arrested him. The evidence was overwhelming. They connected him to the Cheney Colbert massacre, to Betty Williams, to Vera Hill, to others. His defense team tried to argue borderline personality disorder, tried to say he wasn't in control of his actions. The jury didn't buy it. Death sentence. Kenneth Granviel was executed by lethal injection in 1996 at the Huntsville unit in Texas. But here's what keeps investigators up at night. Kenneth confessed to 7 murders, 7 that we know about. How many others were there? How many victims are still out there, unidentified, forgotten? We may never know. But while Kenneth was building his facade in Texas, another killer was operating on the West Coast. A man who turned murder into a science. Cold, calculated, precise. Patrick Kearney. Born in 1939, East Texas. His childhood was different from the others we've talked about. No physical abuse, no broken home in the traditional sense. But there was something missing. Warmth, connection. His family was emotionally cold, distant. The kind of household where feelings weren't discussed and affection wasn't shown. Patrick was bullied in school. He was different, awkward, bigger than the other kids, but somehow still an easy target. So he retreated inward, built walls, lived inside his own head. And inside that head, something dark was growing. By his teenage years, the fantasies started. Revenge fantasies at first. But those slowly changed, morphed into something else. Death, control, power over life itself. But here's what made Patrick different from the others. There was no explosive rage, no crime of passion, no heat of the moment. Everything Patrick did was calculated, planned, methodical. 1962. Patrick's first known murder. The young hitchhiker. Wrong place. Wrong time. Patrick picked him up, drove him to a remote canyon, shot him in the head, dumped the body. Clean, efficient, no mess, no emotion. And that single murder sparked a killing spree that would last more than a decade. The 1960s, the 1970s, California. Patrick had a type. Runaways, street kids, young men and boys who wouldn't be missed right away, who didn't have families looking for them, who lived on the margins of society. Patrick earned a nickname, the trash bag killer. After he dismembered his victims, he'd seal the pieces in black trash bags. Then he'd drive out to remote locations, the Mojave Desert, Angeles National Forest, places where nobody went. And he'd leave them there, scattered across the wilderness, left to be forgotten. Here's what made Patrick so hard to catch. He kept no souvenirs, no trophies, no mementos. Most serial killers keep something, a piece of jewelry, a photograph, something to remember their victims by, something to relive the moment. Not Patrick. Once they were dead and disposed of, he moved on, like it never happened. He lived with a partner, David Hill. To the outside world, they were just two men sharing a house. Hill provided cover, made Patrick seem normal, domestic, safe. Hill later claimed he had no idea what Patrick was doing. No knowledge of the murders, the bodies, any of it. Whether that's true or not, we'll never know for sure. But this wasn't about rage for Patrick. This wasn't about revenge or anger or passion. This was about control, pure and simple. The satisfaction of having complete power over another human being. The ability to decide who lived and who died. 21 confirmed victims, but Patrick claimed the number was higher, much higher. A young man named John LeMay visited Patrick's home. Then John disappeared. His family reported him missing. Police started investigating. And they noticed something. Inconsistencies in Patrick's story. His alibis didn't quite add up. His behavior seemed off. The pressure mounted. Patrick and David Hill fled, drove to Texas, thought maybe they could outrun this. They couldn't. The weight of it all became too much. They turned themselves in. And once Patrick started talking, the truth came pouring out. He gave investigators 28 names, 28 victims, described each murder in detail, where it happened, how it happened, where he dumped the bodies. No emotion, just facts. Like he was reading from a report. He pleaded guilty to 21 counts of murder. The prosecution couldn't prove all 28, but 21 was enough. 21 consecutive life sentences. Patrick Kearney is still alive today, still in prison, still serving those sentences. But how many more victims are out there? How many bodies are still scattered across the California desert, waiting to be found? we may never know the full extent of what Patrick Kearney did. 4 killers, 4 different states, 4 different methods, but the result was the same. Dozens of people dead. Gerald Stano, 41 confessed murders. Victims posed like dolls. Women who society ignored. Joe Metheny, human flesh sold at a barbecue stand. Bodies stored in Tupperware containers. At least 8 confirmed victims, possibly more. Kenneth Granviel, entire families massacred, children murdered. A church-going man hiding behind a mask of respectability. Patrick Kearney, 21 confirmed victims, sealed in trash bags and scattered across the California desert. Surgical precision, no emotion, no remorse. What did they all have in common? They knew how to hide in plain sight. Stano targeted victims people didn't look for. Metheny lived a transient lifestyle that made him invisible. Granviel wore the mask of a reformed Christian. Kearney was quiet, methodical, careful. Society's blind spots enabled them. Let them operate for years. Let them kill again and again and again. Remember where we started. That barbecue stand. Customers eating, paying, leaving satisfied. How many people ate there? How many people unknowingly consumed human flesh? How many walked away with full stomachs, never knowing the truth? And across all 4 cases, how many victims remain unnamed? How many bodies are still out there, waiting to be found? How many families are still searching for answers that may never come? These aren't the famous names. You won't see documentaries about them on streaming platforms. You won't see their faces on magazine covers. Books aren't written about them the way they are about Bundy or Dahmer or Gacy. But their body counts just as high. Their crimes just as brutal. Their victims just as real. So why don't we know these names?